Hello, kids. Hello, everybody. Here we are again. What are we even up to here? What day is it? I don't know. Today's Monday. I know that. What's the last one we did? We did day 9. I think we did day 9 on what day? I don't know. What day did I post that up? Friday? Day 9 on Friday? Yeah. So today, I'm going to move this back a little bit. Today is, so day 10 would have been Saturday, day 11 would have been Sunday, and day 12 is today, Monday, March 30th. Day 12 of the voluntary New 80s Revolution quarantine. So where are we at with this? I don't know. You know, it's crazy. We're quarantined. Nothing really new in the news that's surprising me. I go check it maybe once every 2 days, and we are, again, here's what the news is going to say for the next couple of months or month. Cases on the rise in the U.S. The U.S. is flooded with cases. The U.S. will surpass the world in deaths, and then we will peak, and hopefully then we will start to decline. And then hopefully the doctors and the scientists and everybody that we are relying on will come up with a vaccine and a treatment, and we will survive this as a people. And that's why I don't watch the news, because that's what the news is going to say. I'm not going to learn anything new that I don't want to hear, or that I do want to hear, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I'm actually afraid to look at the news, because I'm afraid to see that, like, China is, reporting new cases. That would be crushing. But anyway, so that's the update on that. Living, doing our thing, quarantining with an asterisk. Am I going to the grocery store? Yes, I went to the grocery store for the first time in about 10 days yesterday. We will do Instacart, but there's a 4-day delivery delay on Instacart. So, we needed some groceries. So there's an area near me that, according to a little local map, has 0 reported cases. What does that mean? That means that, the sick people in that area have yet to be tested. That's what that means. So did I think that there were 0 people in the area? Probably not. But in my brain, my brain lied to myself and said, go, it's safe there. So I did, and, I wore gloves, and the store was not busy, so there was no interaction with others, and I don't know. I had to go grocery shopping. So we're surviving. We're doing okay. We're doing all right. Kids are bored. We're playing outside. We're playing some video games, and we're making some videos for you. So today's topic du jour for us, for kids of the 80s, and especially wrestling fans of the 80s, March or April, naturally just bring about an anticipation. Because whether it was at the end of March or whether it was at the beginning of April, the biggest event of our childhood wrestling year is happening now. WrestleMania. it's almost like the school year. It was almost like the school year for kids. Like, how like you have summer vacation and then you start back in September and you immediately begin anticipating next summer. Or you open up all your presents on Christmas morning, and if you're like me, as you're putting them away in your room like 2 hours after you open them, you immediately begin anticipating next Christmas. Well, for wrestling fans of the 80s, as soon as WrestleMania ended, you were getting ready, you were counting down till next year's WrestleMania. You can't really describe, how electric WrestleMania was. And I say was. And I'm sure for many people it still does bring some electricity. It still brings some to me, even though I'm not even following the WWE product. It still brings some feeling, which is why this year's WrestleMania feels so surreal to me. For the first time in history, and I don't know what we're up to. I think we're up to WrestleMania 36. So for the first time in 36 years, WrestleMania has been altered because of a crisis. Unheard of. Surreal. Mind-blowing that WrestleMania has been altered due to what's going on in the world. The closest that we got to this was when WrestleMania switched locations, I think in 1991, because of the Desert Storm, the Iran or Iraq war. Iran or Iraq, one of those. It was switched from one arena to another because of some security fears. Maybe, I think that's the story. And that's so minor compared to what's happening now. WrestleMania has been taped. The matches are complete. I guess if you search the internet deep enough, you could probably find spoilers. And it's a 2-day event, and it's not in front of a crowd, and it's from a tiny little arena. Not even an arena, I don't know, a gymnasium somewhere. I don't know what the Performance Center is. I don't know what Full Sail Arena is. I think Full Sail Arena is a college arena. I don't know. And there's a lot of, criticism about towards Vince McMahon and towards the show, and I know what they're thinking. We gotta provide some entertainment for the people, but man, you can't, you shouldn't mess with something as sacred as WrestleMania. Should have been postponed. But anyway, we're not here to talk about the current. We don't talk about the current on this channel. We don't talk about modern times. Sorry, it's the other guy. We talk about the past. And so today, right now, we're going to talk about the history, my history with WrestleMania. My memories of WrestleMania. WrestleManias. And today I'm going to talk about the first 5 with you. Now, that doesn't mean that tomorrow I'm going to talk about the next 5. No. I stopped caring about WrestleMania, believe it or not, around WrestleMania 10. Because if you remember, my WWF watching passionately days ended around 1994. My passionate watching of WrestleMania ended around 1994. And in fact, I don't remember I'd have to look back and see what was going on WrestleMania 8 and WrestleMania 9, because I don't remember. So I'm going to talk about the first 5 with you today, because I can speak very vividly about memories of those first 5 events, because I was in my prime of wrestling watching back then. Checking the battery on that bad boy. On this bad boy, we're not live right now because I'm going to insert a few little WrestleMania pictures for you. Now, I want to be careful with this episode because I don't want to review WrestleManias, right? Because that's going to come on Wrestling with the Past. Eventually, we're going to get up to 1985 and we're going to review WrestleManias as they happen. So this isn't going to be a review of those shows. It's going to be just a capture of memories. And as always, I will implore you to jot down your own memories. You guys are killing the comment section of these videos, by the way. And I am just loving sitting back and reading your guys' comments and your memories. So WrestleMania I. Obviously it was the first of its kind, right? NWA, the main competitor for WWF at this time, had already ventured out into the supercard, gone down that road, the supercard road. In fact, other organizations had as well. WCCW in Texas, the Von Erichs Federation, had supercards long before WrestleMania. They had their Parade of Champions, NWA had its Starrcade. NWA started with supercards in 1983. Okay? So Starrcade 83 happened. Starrcade 84 happened before WrestleMania was even a concept. The Parade of Champions happened before WrestleMania was a concept. So the WWF did not start this whole supercard thing. But so WrestleMania, the way that it was advertised, to me, was just another house show. Of course there was some build up, and of course there was a ton of, Hollywood promoting, because Mr. T was involved and Cyndi Lauper was involved and MTV was involved. And, when we review 1985 on Wrestling with the Past, you're going to see how there were actually two cards that helped build WrestleMania. The War to Settle the Score, and I think it was called the Brawl to End It All or something like that. And those were Madison Square Garden house shows that started building towards WrestleMania. So Mr. T got involved, and Hogan and Piper set themselves up, and again, Cyndi Lauper got involved, and that was a nice build. The idea of WrestleMania, and I haven't watched 85 WWF TV in a long time, but they slowly started introducing the WrestleMania concept around January of 85. But there was no major glamorizing of it. It was still just, hey, we're going to do this big supercard in March, and Mr. T is going to be a part of it, and Cyndi Lauper, so you should check it out. And slowly it started to build a little bit of promotion on the talk shows, and Hogan and Richard Belzer and Mr. T and the A-Team, and again, MTV, and of course Cyndi Lauper. So, it started to gain a little bit of traction, and it started to morph into the entity that it is today. But it was a slow build in early 1985. And I remember in the weeks or maybe a month and a half before the show actually happened in 85, every episode of Championship Wrestling would have a graphic, like a bumper, that had this amazing music behind it. It's from Phil Collins, might have been Genesis. Oh, what is that song? Man, you know the song. I think it's Phil Collins, might be Genesis, but it's almost like the theme song to WrestleMania. And they would play that music, and in front of that there would be the match rundown, and they would introduce matches, and all building up to, of course, the huge main event. But it fell on the house show schedule of Madison Square Garden. So there was a house show in January, there was a house show in February, there was WrestleMania in March, there was a house show in April, right? So it was just like a Madison Square Garden house show, just happened to be called WrestleMania. I did not see WrestleMania in 1985 at all. I saw WrestleMania in 1987. I might have seen clips of WrestleMania, but I saw WrestleMania 2 and 3 before, or 2 and maybe slightly before 3, before I ever saw WrestleMania 1 in its entirety. Again, I think a few weeks later they would show a few matches from WrestleMania. I definitely read about it in magazines. I definitely saw highlights of it. But I did not see the entire card until about 1987, which is odd, isn't it? There was no way for me to see it. I didn't know about pay-per-view. I don't know if our cable company offered pay-per-view. I didn't know what a closed circuit arena was. And so I didn't see it. But in 1987, I started renting the VHS tape. And maybe this is like late 86. But I started renting the VHS tape, and I would watch it. I would watch it multiple times while I had it for the rental period, and then I would rent it constantly. So I would watch this event probably 14 or 15 times in like a 1 month or 2 month span. So I overloaded myself with WrestleMania 1. And the card is tremendous. I mean, the card is a spectacular house show card. Really, though. I mean, if you go and you look at the first 3 matches are really opening card or opening match quality matches. You've got the whole thing starts off with Tito Santana against the Executioner, right? Tito Santana, who's one of the biggest superstars in the WWF at the time, is the curtain jerker at WrestleMania. And he's got an enhancement match against the Executioner. And, I've read some stuff that Tito, wondered about his spot on the card, and the story is that Vince McMahon told him, hey, I need somebody that I can count on to go out there and have a great opening match to kick this thing off. And so, Tito took his spot, and the Executioner was under a mask, and most of us know that it was Playboy Buddy Rose playing the role as Executioner, which again I like that concept as well, because you need somebody who's going to go in there and who's going to perform. You can't put a typical Saturday morning championship wrestling no-name enhancement worker on the opening match at WrestleMania. Who knows how they're going to perform. So you put Playboy Buddy Rose, who's been in front of huge crowds, knows how to do what he needs to do, and has a great opening match with Tito Santana. But, that's a house show quality opening match. That's not a WrestleMania match. And then you follow that up with Ricky Steamboat versus Matt Bourne. The future Doink, right? So Doink was on WrestleMania 1. How about that? Again, a standard house show opening match. Superstar versus jobber match. And then you go to David Sammartino versus Brutus Beefcake. And just like the house shows, that's like the next tier up, right? The mid card, I guess you could say. But that's a tier up from those two opening matches. And then, of course, the card gets rolling and you see some tremendous matches. But, you take away the celebrities, you take away Mr. T, and we've got a house show, guys. We've got your standard Madison Square Garden house show. The matches that meant the most to me on that card, first of all, I was extremely interested in the $15,000 body slam challenge match between Andre and Stud. Because as a kid, Andre's going to win $15,000. And after he, of course, wins that match, he takes the bag of money from Bobby Heenan and he starts throwing it into the crowd. And that blew my mind as a kid. Now, I've never met anybody who can vouch for what was actually thrown into the crowd. I assume it was money. I don't know if it was 20s or 10s. Was it hundreds? I don't know. But if you throw money into a crowd today, you're going to have a massive riot. And everybody from every side of the arena is going to rush over and try to get that $5. But the crowd at WrestleMania was subdued and normal and fine and just plucked some money out of the air when they could. The main event did not disappoint. Actually, Mr. T did not disappoint. He pulled off a few pretty good moves. He threw a few very impressive hip tosses. I think he body slammed Paul Orndorff at one point, and it looked great. But what I do recall, looking back, is that Mr. T's his endurance, he was a little blown up. Mr. T was blown up before the match started. He was huffing and puffing on the ring and about to collapse. And it's just funny to watch him have no stamina and just gassed. Of course, it leads to the Paul Orndorff face turn. Just great stuff. But again, I didn't see it until a couple of years later. I didn't see it in its entirety. Now, WrestleMania II was extremely unique in that it was held in 3 different locations. I believe Los Angeles, LA, LA, and probably LA. WrestleMania was Nassau Coliseum in New Jersey, the Rosemont Horizon in Chicago, and Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena in LA. 3 different locations, jam-packed to the gills with fans. And those fans are only getting about 4 matches. And then they would put on the screen, closed circuit, maybe on the hockey scoreboard that hung from the ceiling. Maybe they set up some projection screens, but those fans in those arenas could then watch the other matches from the other places. But man, what a concept. What a strange idea that was. And even today, I think it's a terrible idea to split up WrestleMania into 3 different locations. And again, fans in attendance would only see 4 matches. The good thing is that each location had a main event. Okay, so it wasn't like one area only got the good matches. And those main events were the Battle Royal, I believe, the steel cage match between Hogan and Bundy, and the Mr. T. Roddy Piper boxing match. So those were the 3 main events in the 3 areas. And I'm not fact-checking that, so that's from memory. I did see WrestleMania 2 when it happened. So I was at a 4th arena for WrestleMania. Finally got to experience something called closed circuit television, where you go to... So we went to this place in town in Rochester called the Dome Arena. And the Dome Arena... I don't know what this place was ever really used for. We might have had a few, like, St. Bonaventure games at the Dome Arena, or maybe like a Syracuse basketball game, maybe. But the Dome Arena was just like, farm, a livestock show arena, a gun show. The gun show has gone to the Dome Arena. We used to have a huge toy show at the Dome Arena. I don't know what it was, and I don't know what its point was. But in 1986, little 9-year-old me, 76, 10-year-old me, is going to the Dome Arena to watch WrestleMania II. As a kid, I don't think I had any idea what closed circuit television meant. So I didn't know what I was getting myself into at the Dome Arena. But when I got there, there were chairs set up on the floor like an arena, like an event. And then, of course, there were, bleachers or chairs, just like any arena. But there were 4 screens set up, and these are just really big projection screens. Okay, remember, it's 1986. So we're not talking about high definition. We're talking about 4 projection screens set up in a square so that each side of the arena could see the event. And I happened to have floor seats for this, and I happened to have, like, 4th or 5th row, I think. And all that meant was that I was just a little closer to the screen. And you remember in 1986 what projection screens, the image that they would cast. It was dark, it was a little grainy, they had the sound pumping through the arena, but of course there's going to be glitches and errors and, But as a 10-year-old kid, this was the greatest day ever. I was at WrestleMania, and they would show the feeds from all 3 locations. So you sat there for like a 3-hour show. And what I do remember is that the crowd was into this just as much as they would be live at the event. There was cheering, there was booing, there was chanting, crowd pops for moments that they needed to pop for, and it was great. It was like being at the event. And, of course, the build-up to the big Hogan versus King Kong Bundy steel cage match. This is like one of the first times that big, stupid blue steel cage was introduced. And I hated that thing because as a kid, I was like, well, how are you gonna bleed? You can't, the chain link fence, that's like barbed wire, right? That'll just rip your skin apart. How are you going to bleed if you get slammed into a metal bar steel cage? You're not. You're going to get a concussion. Of course. So how are you going to bleed? So I didn't like it because I didn't think there'd be blood. I didn't like the cage. But that, the build up to that match was huge. When we start talking about Saturday night's main event on Wrestling with the Past, we will show how King Kong Bundy and Hulk Hogan, that feud started. As a kid, did I think that Hogan was going to lose the title to Bundy? Probably not. But it was, it was a good main event. It was a good, they created a good monster heel for Hogan. I remember not caring much about the boxing match. I remember caring the most about the Battle Royal. Because, again, as a 10-year-old, Battle Royals were very special. It was something very special. I loved Battle Royals. And here we have this huge Battle Royal, of course, with Andre the Giant. These football players are in it. William the Refrigerator Perry, who at this point we're very familiar with because of the Chicago Bears and the Super Bowl Shuffle and all that stuff. So, it was fun. It was fun, and I didn't care that Andre the Giant was the predictable winner, and of course he won. But anyway, my moment of popping, and I remember this vividly, very vividly. We during the middle of the Bulldogs match, for some reason, the person that I was with, and it was an older cousin of mine. Actually, he's been a part of some other stories. This was my dad's cousin who actually lived with us, and then when he moved out, I got his room. and I got cable as an 8 or 9 year old boy. I had cable, so anyway, I went with him. He took me. He was probably like 23 at the time, but I saw him as this ridiculously old adult. He took me, and for some reason we went to the concession stand during the Bulldog, Greg Valentine, Bulldog Dream Team match, the tag team title match. And I think I got, a hot dog or something. And I remember my cousin came back he had a beer. And we were walking back to our seats. And we weren't at our seats yet. And I could see the screen. And as we're walking through, I see the Bulldogs get the pin on the Dream Team. And of course, win the tag team titles. And like a 10-year-old boy does, I started jumping up and down in the aisle screaming. And I punched his beer, and it went everywhere. So I knocked out a beer while I was celebrating, and man, how pissed he must have been to stand in that long line for a beer, and goofy little me knocks it over because I'm celebrating the Bulldogs title win. Anyway, great stuff. WrestleMania 3, the most special. WrestleMania 3 was the most special for me. My best friend at the time, who you've heard me talk about, Howie Decker, we watched it together. And that's the first time that I watched a WrestleMania with a friend. And man, were we excited about WrestleMania 3. This was the prime. This was the peak of the LJN playing years. This was the peak of wrestling. I mean, I got to know wrestling. I got introduced to wrestling in like early to mid 84. But, you just, you watch it, you learn about it, 85, 86, 87, you are a wrestling expert. I am eating and breathing and sleeping wrestling in 1987. And the absolute unthinkable was happening. Andre the Giant was going to be facing Hulk Hogan. Andre the Giant, the lifelong face, the lifelong good guy, had turned bad and was challenging for the world's title, taking on his best friend, Hulk Hogan. Wow. Mind-blowing. Now, an 11-year-old kid has no idea that Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant fought each other many, many, many times before. And fought each other like 7 years earlier, or 6 years earlier, or 5 years earlier. Okay? Didn't know that. Had no idea. Had no clue. Also had no idea that Andre the Giant had been body slammed multiple times throughout his career. But Hogan was going to be the first one to do it. The build-up to that match on WWF Wrestling Superstars at the time, or Superstars of Wrestling, was perfectly done. They built the Andre heel turn so slowly and so subtly that you just, all the kids just thought maybe Andre was going to come to his senses. Maybe he wasn't going to turn full heel. I mean, they built this thing up. You remember, in mid to late 86, Andre took some time off. And they called it a suspension because it was discovered, well, Andre was actually suspended, storyline suspended, for an attack on Bobby Heenan or something. I can't remember. I can't wait to go back and watch it with you guys. But he was suspended, and he came back as under a mask as the Machines. Okay, and obviously it was Andre the Giant. But the WWF wasn't sure about this, right? They had no proof that it was actually Andre the Giant. And when they found out that it was Andre the Giant, they suspended him indefinitely. And I don't know what was going on with Andre. I don't know if he was doing Japan tours or, health stuff or just time off. I don't know. But he was gone for most of 86 or most of late 86. So you kind of forgot about Andre the Giant. And then you hear grumblings that he's coming back, and they start to do some little vignettes on Piper's Pit, and Hogan's Wrestler of the Year, trophy is bigger than Andre the Giant's, and Andre's pissed, and he walks off this. Man, the build to this was incredible. And it packed the Pontiac Silverdome to the gills. Something 93,000 reported people. And in 1987, that's a lot of people going to a wrestling show. A lot of people. You know, the WWF at the time was used to filling 16, 17, 21,000 seat arenas. We're talking about almost 100,000 people going to see this show. Anyway, my friend's dad had a friend who had a lake house at this place locally called Canisius Lake. And it's about an hour from us. And we were going to watch this WrestleMania on pay-per-view. This is my first experience with pay-per-view. We're going to watch this show from Canisius Lake with a couple of other kids and some other adults and some pizza and some chicken wings. And man, was the hype for this through the roof. I could not wait to do this. And again, the anticipation. Now, these shows aired at 4 p.m. Back in the day, WWF pay-per-views aired at 4 p.m. And they were usually on a Sunday. With the exception of Survivor Series, which was on a Thursday, Thanksgiving night. So here we are at, 10 o'clock in the morning, heading up to Canisius Lake. And we hung out, we played, we ran around the lake. We might have brought our figures with us, I can't remember. But we just couldn't wait. The countdown to WrestleMania III was on. And when the show finally started, we were just glued to the television. And I think the first pop of the night for me was Ricky Steamboat defeating Randy Savage. Because again, you talk about build-up. The Hogan-Andre build-up was huge. But the Ricky Steamboat, Randy Savage build-up had its own hugeness. With Randy Savage crushing the larynx of Ricky Steamboat with the bell on the throat. Ricky Steamboat was draped over the metal barrier outside the ring, and Savage came off the ropes with a double axe handle to the back, crushing the larynx. He couldn't breathe for weeks. He couldn't talk for weeks. Savage almost killed him. And Ricky Steamboat comes back and defeats Randy Savage for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania III. That was a huge pop moment for us. But we were all there for one reason. We were there for Hogan-Andre. And go back and watch WrestleMania III. The electricity, the anticipation of watching these two icons square off for the first time it's beyond words. It's beyond words. The magnitude of this event. The immovable force meets the inanimate object. Thank you, Gorilla Monsoon. Is that how it is? Immovable force means inanimate? It's not inanimate object, is it? Let's look it up. The immovable force. There's a couple different variations. Irresistible force. That's it. Inanimate object. That's an object that's not real. The irresistible force meets the immovable object. What a tremendous tagline. The irresistible force meets the immovable object. Hogan-Andre. Tremendous. Of course, Hogan does get to body slam Andre the Giant. Not the best looking body slam we've ever seen. And according to Hogan, it tore every bone and muscle in his body. According to Hogan. But he got the pin, and one of the most spectacular moments of that card was Andre and Bobby Heenan riding those little carts, because they brought those motorized carts to the ring because the walkway was so long, it was so huge. They brought the carts to the ring, The wrestlers rode on these carts that looked incredible, and I wonder where they are today. But as Andre lost, he rode back on the cart, and fans were throwing paper at him, and he just stood there taking all the paper. And Bobby Heenan had his head down the whole time. And I loved that. I loved it because this was Bobby Heenan's chance. Bobby Heenan was so sure that he was finally going to defeat Hulkamania and bring the world title to the Heenan family. He had Andre the Giant. And he failed. And he just rode back to the dressing room just like this the whole time. Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe his fate. Great event made very, very special by, the friendship and Canisius Lake and all that great stuff. WrestleMania 4. WrestleMania 4 is touted by some as a terrible WrestleMania. Guys, it's my favorite. It's my favorite WrestleMania because for the first time in my life, the WWF title is vacant. We don't have a champion. This is the whole Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Ted DiBiase, evil twin referee gimmick, which again, adults say how stupid, but it was the most brilliant thing I have ever seen. No kid knows that there's a Dave and an Earl Hebner. No kid knows that. And now you see these two guys who are identical twins standing in the ring. The evil twin referee. Or as Vince McMahon once said, that Ted DiBiase paid for a referee to get plastic surgery to look like Dave Hebner. Which is fantastic. Just wonderful. But for the first time, the title was held up. There was no title. There's no champion of the World Wrestling Federation. And so they came up with a tournament. And I have always loved wrestling tournaments. I have loved them. I love them today. If AEW would do a tournament to determine their first ever television champion or U.S. champion, I'm going to be glued to the seat. Glued to the TV or whatever I'm glued to. I don't know. But this was just no ordinary tournament. This was a tournament for the World Wrestling Federation Championship belt. I have to change the battery. Stay with me, guys. We're going to run out of battery here. Oh, crap. Where is my battery? Ah, here it is. Sorry about that. The battery said it had like 62 minutes. I've only been rambling on for 48 minutes. I mean, come on. Don't lie to me, battery charger. Disgraceful. But anyway, the WrestleMania 4 tournament, possibilities were endless. As a kid, any one of those guys could have won the show. I would imagine, what would it be like if One Man Gang was the WWF champion? What would it be like if Hacksaw Jim Duggan won the title? Greg Valentine, Don Morocco. Looking back, these guys who had absolutely no chance in the world of winning the WWF title. Jake the Snake, Rick Rude. But of course, at the end, it comes down to the Mount Rushmore faces of the WWF at the time. Hogan, Savage, DiBiase, Andre's involved. And I remember the Hogan-Andre match, because this was their rematch, and they were thrust into the second round. They got a bye. And so Hogan and Andre went into the second round, and you're like, whoa, how is this going to happen? All right, Hogan's going to beat Andre. He's going to go into the second round. He's going to dominate the tournament, and it's like nothing ever happened. Hogan's the champion, right? When Hogan and Andre went to a double count-out or double disqualification, and both were eliminated, we've got chaos on our hands, ladies and gentlemen. Who is possibly going to win this tournament and be the champion? I mean, in my life, the WWF only had one champion. I never saw anybody else as champion besides Hulk Hogan. And now he's out? Who's going to... And of course, it all leads to the newly faced Randy Savage getting his moment and defeating Ted DiBiase with the help of Hulk Hogan and with the posing with Hulk Hogan and with the fanfare of Hulk Hogan. Randy Savage becomes the WWF champion, defeating Ted DiBiase in the finals of the tournament. Great, great, great stuff. If I could have rewritten the tournament, I mean, you can't do it any other way because, DiBiase, they're he's going to be the main bad guy for a while, and Savage, I'm thinking, what if Rick Rude went a little further in the tournament? He was eliminated in the first round. Him and Jake Roberts went to a draw. What if Rick Rude got himself into the finals? Who knows? But Randy Savage wins the title and begins the Mega Powers. The Mega Powers, the unthinkable union between Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, right? Maybe even more unthinkable than Hogan and Orndorff and their little union. And that leads to my final WrestleMania of the video, WrestleMania I. Well, of course, the Mega Powers explode. And again, tremendous build-up that we're just not going to ever see again. We're never going to see the slow build, the heel turn, the subtle heel turn of Randy Savage. And you could see it coming. Savage would look at Hogan strange when he would say something about Elizabeth. When Hogan would mention how he's close with Elizabeth or Elizabeth is their manager. In fact, I remember one interview when Hulk Hogan said he loved Elizabeth like a sister. Well, Randy Savage shot him a look. Oh, and you could see it coming. And then, of course, the huge Saturday night's main event. This was actually just called the main event. It was on a different night. I think it was on a Friday or a Thursday night. But the Mega Powers finally exploded. Finally exploded in this overly dramatic soap opera scene where Hogan has carried a fallen Elizabeth back to the dressing room to get her some medical attention, and he's praying at her bedside because she was knocked unconscious at ringside, and he's praying and please God, oh God, please God. And Randy Savage comes rushing in and, what are you doing? Get your hands off of her, and it's on. And he beats the crap out of the Hulkster in the medic's office as Elizabeth screams. And then at one point, she tries to pull Savage off of Hogan, and Savage just launches her out of the camera, out of the scene. I'm hoping that she lands on some kind of mattress or padding or something, because he throws her. Oh man. And then, the build up to the Mega Powers exploding. And Hogan winning back the world's title. And that was awesome. I didn't think that Hogan would not come out on top. I'm getting a little older at this point. I'm pretty sure that Hogan's going to win the title and re-begin the Hulkamania era in the WWF as the champion. But what a spectacular build-up and what a spectacular main event. The Mega Powers explode. And I remember that night, and I've told this story before, after WrestleMania, because remember, WrestleMania's on at 4 o'clock. It ends at about 7. So it's still early. I don't have to go to bed. And I pull out the LJNs, and I'm trying to think, all right, who can turn on Hogan so I can recreate this WrestleMania match? And I remember having Hillbilly Jim turn heel on Hogan, and I had a Hulk Hogan versus Hillbilly Jim match on the night of WrestleMania 5. So if you're not as into it as you are now with this 2-night pre-taped crowdless WrestleMania as a result of this chaos that's happening in our world, Go back and watch some of the old WrestleManias. And remember, you and I are going to review these in depth on Wrestling with the Past eventually. I mean, we're only up to January 21st, 1983, so it's going to be a while, but we'll get there. Go back and watch some old WrestleManias. If you're not interested in today's product, go watch some of the old stuff. Watch some of the first 5 WrestleManias and just see how different things were back then. And of course, as always, give me that paragraph of your WrestleMania memories. And stay safe. And I'll see you tomorrow, right? We'll talk about something else tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Goodbye now.